Before we get into the video, I wanted to share a special tool that David and I have been using for over 2 years to manage our inventory on Amazon. The tool is called SoStocked, and it is a very powerful tool. It's designed specifically for inventory management. If you're in a physical products business selling on Amazon, you need to be in stock, especially with the inventory restrictions lately. This tool is incredibly powerful. If you're having trouble with inventory management, this might be a tool to help you. SoStocked is partnered with Firing Demand, and they've offered our guests, our listeners, a 30-day free trial. So click the link in the video description to get 30-day free trial. On to the video.
Welcome, everyone, to the Firing Demand podcast. On today's episode, we have the honor to interview Andrew Buehler. Andrew is a finance professional turned food enthusiast and entrepreneur. Andrew spent 10 years in finance and wealth management and has recently pivoted into entrepreneurship and food, two of our favorite topics to talk about on this podcast. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks for having me, David and Ken. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So to start things off, can you please share with our listeners a little bit about your background and path from finance to pitmaster and e-commerce business founder?
I'm originally from the Chicagoland area. Definitely grew up kind of around a lot of food. And when I was in school, either was involved in leadership positions or even started the clubs myself that were dedicated to, doing big cookouts on campus. College, I hosted an annual pig roast for the entire school. Kind of always just loved food. Definitely a passion and a hobby on the side, but originally pursued a career in financial services, and ultimately COVID happened. We all spent a lot more time home alone thinking about, what we want to do with our lives and if we're happy with kind of where we currently are positioned. And living in New York City, I also couldn't help but notice that every single day there appeared to be more and more Amazon boxes in the lobby. What started as a mailroom that was kind of a closet with some packages in it. Within a matter of months, it basically became the entire lobby. I thought it was almost like walking in Christmas morning or a distribution center or something. There were just so many boxes. It got me thinking, I think this e-commerce trend has happened for a while, but is likely going to continue to happen. And there's definitely categories and products that have been more challenging to deliver direct to consumer in the past, but are becoming easier and easier. And refrigerated or products that require climate control, I felt were one of those categories. And as people during COVID kind of hesitated to go to the grocery store themselves and began to potentially consider grocery delivery online, I thought that might be one of the frontiers that had a bit of momentum in it for something that was going to have some natural drivers to grow it, and began tinkering with some ideas. Ultimately, I settled on a barbecue business, not only because of my passion and kind of experience with it, but also the thought that smoking a rack of ribs for 3 to 5 hours or a brisket for, 8 to 12 plus hours is pretty inconvenient for most. If we do that, vacuum seal it and ship it to people, I think there's a lot of people that enjoy barbecue, but are intimidated by the cook times. Maybe they don't own a smoker. Maybe they live in a city. They don't have a backyard. There's definitely a couple ways to kind of pitch a value out of having a pre-cooked solution. And that's how I ultimately landed on barbecue and e-com. Shortly after COVID, took the leap of faith, and have loved it ever since.
Awesome. So I want to focus in on from making that observation in the mailroom to sending out that first rack of ribs. What did that process look like? When did you decide to fire the man? Can you take us through that a little bit?
It's a little bit cliche, but I actually love it. I woke up New Year's Day and I was like, what are my New Year's resolutions? And I was like, I'm done working for the man. And I just sat down on New Year's Day and I was on my computer for probably, 8 to 12 hours and just ripped a 15-page business plan. Obviously that plan pivoted and originally I thought it was going to be a niche food distribution business. And then ultimately I, settled on barbecue and D2C, but I was tinkering with like, how do I get into food? And I saw some of these trends in e-com, and I saw some trends in kind of other areas of the market. And after a couple months, kind of settled on the business plan or what I ultimately wanted to pursue. Then the next question was, all right, well, how do we execute this? It was kind of easy to envision what I'll call the 5-year plan, which is, I want to have a diverse menu, not just one product. When I originally started, I had just one product. Now I have 2. We're going to have 3 within a matter of weeks here. It was easy to think of, you want a full menu, a couple different protein options, complementary sides. You want the product to be available nationwide. But how do you kind of really water that down into something that is enough of like a proof of concept to run at it with like very limited resources? And so the idea was, let's just do one product, which we chose pork baby back ribs. And the reason we chose that is because we kind of said, hey, the 2 most iconic and like labor intensive dishes are ribs or brisket. So we're going to launch with one or the other. And we ended up doing ribs. And now we have 2 products. And the second one was naturally brisket. How do we not invest in a bunch of like heavy equipment, machinery, people, labor? How do we de-risk this from a financial perspective to really see if this makes sense before we go all in financially? And that's what attracted me to crowdfunding. So I did a Kickstarter campaign because for those who aren't familiar with crowdfunding, it essentially allows you to get IOUs. You say, hey, if you give me, $20, I'll give you a t-shirt. If you give me $100, I'll send you some racks of ribs. And you can have different incentives at different thresholds, but ultimately you can collect a mass sum of money in exchange for pre-orders. And so by doing the Kickstarter, I was able to raise $30,000 without ever making a product, without ever hiring someone and saying, okay, awesome. There actually are a couple hundred people that want to give this product a shot. Now I can, work with a contract manufacturer. Now I can go to a distribution center. Now I can approach some of these parties that I need in order to make this thing successful. But I have some money in my pocket. I no longer appear like a guy with just an idea. I mean, got a couple hundred customers. I've got a couple hundred orders. This whole process is de-risked. And so that allowed me to essentially approach these third parties and appear like someone they should entertain, someone they should actually have a real conversation with. And so we did a Kickstarter in July 2022 and ultimately launched a website and started shipping product in September of 2022. As I mentioned, in 2022, it was kind of New Year's Day was when we started tinkering with what do we want to do? That's when we made the business plan. And, from New Year's Day till call it March was the business plan adjustments or figuring out what we actually wanted to do. And then I would say March to July was the planning of how do we execute a successful Kickstarter? Who are the parties that need to be in the room in order to make something happen if we are successful at the Kickstarter? And the whole process took about 9 months to get off the ground from idea to successfully mailing products to people.
It's an incredible story, by the way. And I think, a couple hundred people raising their hands saying, hey, I'll take some ribs or I'll take some brisket. Like that's more than friends and family. And so, you have an idea whenever like a bunch of people sign up for it. And so on Kickstarter, you raise all the money and then do you have to deliver the products by a certain timeline or what kind of roadmap were you working with once that finalized?
Kickstarter is pretty generous because there's a variety of projects that are on there. Some of them are, people are developing software tools or games. Other people are delivering physical products. So I was in the physical product category space. Some people don't deliver the product for many months or even a year. I was actually on like the relatively quick or fast end of most Kickstarters since I delivered a product, I think about 6 weeks after the campaign ended. And that was largely because from that period of March to the Kickstarter launching, I'd already met with like a handful of distribution partners. I'd already done product testing in terms of like how the ribs were going to be cooked and how they were going to taste and, what seasoning and sauce was going to be on them and stuff. So, so that was all outlined. And so my Kickstarter I think that was part of the reason I had success on it because most Kickstarter campaigns fail. But I think one of the ways to like de-risk it and really inspire people is like clearer and more exact you can be with the product you're going to ultimately deliver and the time frame you're going to deliver it in. The more confident or more willing people are going to be to invest in you or to give the product a try. If you're giving a very loose plan or a loose description, people are going to be less interested in investing in that campaign. So you can be successful and deliver the product a year later, but I think the more exact you are with your timing and product description, the more likely you are to be successful a crowdfunding campaign.
Two more follow-up questions, and then I'll kick it back to David. First one is back to, I think you mentioned it was New Year's Day, and so you're kind of like, you're fed up. You're like, I'm done. Was there like a life event that happened, or were you just bored with what you were doing? And what kind of like motivated you to say, I'm pivoting?
It really was, as I describe it, COVID. And it was just spending more time home alone, not being able to socialize as much and reflecting. And I was 31 at the time. So I had, roughly call it 10 years of experience out of school. And I said, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? I feel like I'm at a point where, I've got a couple bucks in the bank. I have some experience. I'm not the most tenured man in the world, but I'm no longer a complete idiot. I'm no longer 22. What do we actually want to do? And it was that big kind of life question I was asking myself a lot during COVID. I was like, am I happy with my current job? Do I want to do this for the rest of my career? One of the things that really attracted me to e-commerce, what I'll call a digital business, is I really wanted to not be tied to a specific geographic location. I didn't want to be due at a specific desk, a big building in Manhattan or a big building in a city. I wanted to be able to work from a computer and a cell phone from anywhere in the world. And that's the beauty of honestly just digital digital-based businesses and e-com in particular, when you're getting things off or you're sourcing products or trying to create your product, you might have to spend a lot of time in a specific location, but ultimately, once you get the flywheel moving, something you can manage from a computer anywhere. And that was really the main goal. It was building a digital business. And then I saw those trends that made e-commerce and barbecue and some of the other categories I fit into attractive. And it felt like they had natural tailwinds. So I wanted to pursue it.
Last follow-up one is, so I like how you've kind of taken a little bit of personal passion with kind of cooking and Pitmaster. And then you've also married that with your finance background. Like not many people I know, normal people can sit down and crank out a 15-page business plan and, in a little bit of time. And so how much has your experience with, your finance and Pitmaster, like how much has that helped you on a scale of 1 to 10? Like, let's say you got a buddy that is not in finance and they're not a Pitmaster. Like how much a leg up does that have for you?
One of the challenges with entrepreneurship is in the beginning, you have to wear every single hat. You are sales, you are legal, you are marketing, you are product innovation, whatever you can think of, in the big company, there's 20 departments, you're all of them. So I would say that the background in financial services really helped me with like creating the structure and the plan in terms of like, how much margin do I need in order to cover all these expenses and kind of some of the forecasting and planning in terms of like, what will this business look like if it is successful? And it also helped me a little bit with like the contract negotiation and kind of like SLAs, like service level agreements and things like that. When I was talking to like distribution and warehousing, and I was talking to manufacturing, when I was talking to other third parties that I'd hired at given times to help get this project off the ground. Something I did not realize, and anyone that's going to go into e-com, I must say, you need to learn a lot about digital marketing. Digital marketing is your sales. That's how you acquire customers, and you're going to learn a whole new language, CAC, customer acquisition cost, ROAS, return on ad spend. You're going to learn a million new acronyms that really are kind of the lifeblood of the business. It's, are we getting customers and are we getting them at a price that justifies selling the product? And so finance and like the food passion definitely helped me with like, how should this business be structured? And ultimately what's the product I want to serve? But the day-to-day of the business is a lot of digital marketing. And I had to learn that on the fly. And I didn't realize how much digital marketing it was going to be. And so I'm going to raise my hand now. If you're thinking about e-com, make sure you learn about digital marketing. It's going to be a big chunk of your day.
From the time you make the decision, this is what I want to do, to firing the man, what's that time period look like?
So I ultimately left the job in June. I was like the second week of June, and the Kickstarter went live in July. So I started planning, New Year's Day. So it was about 6 months to ultimately firing the man, and about 7 months to the wheels are moving. We have a live Kickstarter campaign. Things are happening. But I would say during that like March to June time period was when things got really serious in terms of this no longer was like an idea or a Word document saved on my desktop. It was, we're flying to Wisconsin to meet with a cold storage and distribution center to see if, they should be the partner we want to choose with for ultimately pick and pack. We're doing product testing. We're starting to invest, real time and some dollars into making this thing a success. So I was pretty pregnant come the March to June timeframe. And, we pulled the trigger in June and then launched in July.
And then going in on that day, when you are going to your superiors and saying, I have 10 years of experience in finance and I'm going into pork belly. What's going through your mind? Do you have some doubt? Are there some things that you're nervous about? Walk us through that day.
I'm going to be honest. They were, I don't want to say oddly very supportive, but they kind of got it. Because the way I pitched it was the way I kind of described it to you guys in the beginning. I said, hey, we've all had a lot of time to ourselves these past 2 years. I've been doing some reflecting, as I'm sure you all have too. And I've decided I want to give something else a try. That framework, I think everyone just kind of respected or got. I mean, they said good luck, and some of them supported the Kickstarter campaign financially or just by, emailing the Kickstarter to other people. And I've checked in with my previous employer probably once every 6 months, and they're proud of the progress I made. I'll be honest, I was confident actually in the beginning. One of the challenges when you fire the man, everyone around you is like, what are you going to do about insurance? I'm like, what about the 401k? Like, are you sure you're going to be able to pay your bills? Like, that's the feedback you're getting from like your family or like your close friends and your loved ones. And my whole thing was, if not now, when? Like, it only gets harder. It only gets harder to fire the man every single day. Every single day you do something else, you're getting more invested in that existing career path. You're getting more invested, or you're also starting to, you get older. Now you have a mortgage, you get older. Maybe you have dependents now, you have kids or something. And it only becomes more pressure to like stay on your current path as each day passes. So honestly, if you're considering something like this, you should go as quickly as possible. You should start ASAP, because it's only going to get harder to quit as each minute passes.
You've talked a lot about risk, and that's my next question. I'll kick it over to Ken. But I think a lot of people, when they're thinking of risk, what they're thinking of is, what if this doesn't work? But they never dive deeper. As you're talking about your business plan and kind of going from New Year's Day through executing this plan, you talk about de-risking some things. And so can you talk about how you think of each category of risk and then how you de-risk them?
And that's definitely the finance background in me, where I was talking about de-risking a lot. Because essentially, I've noticed so many, and even when I was meeting with like the distribution center, they were kind of surprised with my relatively disciplined approach, I'll call it. Because I was asking them, hey, how many SKUs do your most? It's also important whenever you pursue a business and you're talking to people to like basically ask them for feedback on like people they've worked with before that have been successful. So when I went to the distribution center, I said, hey, what does your typical customer look like? Hey, the guys that fail in 6 months, what did they do wrong? How many SKUs do they have? How many SKUs do the winners have? And that's how you do a little bit of market research. I mean, you can, read online and watch YouTube videos or talk to other entrepreneurs, but I mean, the best people to talk to are ultimately the people you're going to be working with that have worked with and seen hundreds of you. And they've been in the business for 20 or 30 years. And so they know the difference between the winners and the losers. Something that I remember the distribution center guy said is, so many people come in here and think they want to launch like 80 products at the beginning. And then, 1 or 2 work and 78 don't. And then there's a bunch of stuff that you have to throw out or heavily discount. And, the second I heard that, I already knew we're doing just one product. And he was surprised I wanted to do just one, not 10. But another line that one of my old mentors used to say, which I love, is let's always try to take the sniper rifle approach versus the shotgun. And what he meant by that is, let's do one thing really, really, really well. And let's keep working on that one thing until we become the best at it before we consider adding a second or third spinning plate. There's a lot of people that do the shotgun approach where you try 8 things. Maybe you're doing 8 things mediocre or, 6 out of 10 at best. I rather do one thing at a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, and people will always come to me for that one thing, and I will learn how to do other things as time passes. And so another big de-risking was, okay, what's the thing that we're going to do the best? We're going to have the best ribs that you can order direct to your door. All right, I don't need to become an expert, the distribution and cold storage component and the amount of ice you put in the box, if it's going to Texas in July versus Seattle in December, or if it's in transit for 4 days instead of 2 days, because it's a perishable product. There's a lot of math that goes into this. It's, what size is the cooler, how much ice goes in it, blah, blah, blah. I shouldn't even worry about that stuff. Let's go find someone that's great at that, pay them to do that. I'm going to make the best ribs. I'm going to focus on the best ribs, and I'm going to find someone that has already mastered these other things. So the de-risking for me was picking that one thing I want to do and then finding people that I could work with on a contract basis that could basically do everything else and allow me to be a best-in-class business in these other categories. And as we get bigger, we'll potentially bring in those other functions in-house. We'll say, hey, we've mastered ribs. It's going well. It's somewhat on autopilot now. We can improve our margins if we learn how to do this other function, or we can, improve our basket size if we decide to become great at brisket now too, or we can improve, our XYZ if we learn something else. And so the de-risking for me was really just picking that one thing I wanted to be great at, and then finding a bunch of partners or people to work with to help me be great in other categories. And now that I'm comfortable in, ribs, that's why we're able to add another product. Potentially, we're going to start bringing more functions in-house. That's how I would describe the de-risking in the most 5,000-foot view kind of way possible.
I really like the methodical approach you've taken to kind of launching this, de-risking it. It's kind of funny. David has got a background in finance, and so he's also always, I'm the opposite. I'm a risk taker, and so he's always like de-risking everything. And so I can kind of see that comes from finance background, is de-risking everything, which I think is great. I mean, your chances of success just incrementally go up as you break it down and de-risk each step. And so I really like that. I also want to reemphasize how you recommended talking to your partners, your distributors, asking them that have 20, 30 years experience, hey, what are the guys that are successful doing? What are the guys that are failing doing? Like learning from them. Like just, it's a free resource, right? You can ask them questions and they're going to share it with you, and you can kind of modify your plan as you go. I think that's brilliant.
And you have to remember, they want you to be successful too. The last thing they want to do is work with you for 6 months and have you go away. The more successful you are, the more money they make as well. So they're artificially invested in you or indirectly invested in you because, they want your business to grow so they get more business too.
My next question, let's get into food. And so why should somebody buy pre-cooked food versus trying to learn how to cook it on their own from scratch?
There's a couple different value props that we bring, and that's part of the reason we chose the barbecue category. As I mentioned, a lot of this food's very labor intensive. And I think most people, when they think about making lunch or dinner, they think about making lunch or dinner in 15 to 30 minutes max. Maybe for a holiday or a special occasion, Thanksgiving, yeah, you're in the kitchen all day. But your average Saturday, I don't really want to commit my entire day to prepping dinner. And so the people that make like ribs and brisket and stuff like this, it's a culture. It's a lifestyle. Like it's their hobby. They love the process of making it. Most people, at least who I've met, enjoy eating food. They don't necessarily enjoy making it. And so I viewed it as like, this is the one of the food categories where you have the biggest polarization in terms of like, a lot of people like to eat it. Nobody wants to make it because it's so labor intensive. And so we really just lean into the whole time incentive or the time advantage. The other piece is, it requires special equipment. Not everyone has a smoker. Most people have, a gas grill or a Weber or something in their backyard. That's also part of the reason that we marketed ourselves as urban smokehouse, because if you live in the city, most apartments or condos don't really allow that stuff out here. If you have like a balcony or a deck, they might have like a shared deck or a shared roof space or outdoor space where there's like a communal grill or two. I've yet to find the building that has the communal smoker. There's like a big chunk of like America that when they travel to a place like St. Louis or they travel to a place like Texas or the Carolinas, it's like part of their trip. They're like, oh, we're going to Texas. Like we should try brisket. Oh, we're going to the Carolinas. We should get some ribs. Oh, we're going to St. Louis. We should get some ribs. That's great. I bet those people would like to eat that item more than like once a year. This is a great workaround for that. It's, hey, you don't have the time, you don't have the equipment, you don't have the know-how. Our product's idiot proof. It ships to your door in 2 or 3 days. Throw it in your oven. It's ready quick. It tastes amazing. That's the pit. And at the end of the day, food, it just really comes down to like, does it taste good? And then after that, it's all of these other things are number 2, 3, 4, 5. So first thing is you got to like it. So that's why I focus on just amazing tasting ribs. But then the convenience pitch quickly sells itself for you.
I agree. I think the time alone, so I've been smoking meat for like probably 10, 12 years. And I would say I'm average at it. I'm not really good, but I enjoy it. But if I go to a nice restaurant that has a pit master that's been doing it for a long, like it's not even comparable. It's way better. And so, but it also takes me, I have to go buy it. I have to prep it. I have to, clean up the smoke. Like I have to do all that stuff, and it takes a lot of time. And so I think just the convenience alone, as well as if it's really, really good, is it's kind of a no-brainer.
I agree. And, it's crazy because originally I thought my demographic was going to be people in cities that are, living kind of this lifestyle I described. But actually a good chunk of the customers are also actually like barbecue guys who then are like, yeah, I mean, I love doing that once in a while, but I don't want to do that every week. It's the convenience actually speaks to the people that are about that life too, unless they own a barbecue restaurant themselves and are doing this quite literally 5 days a week or 7 days a week. It's a labor of love, but it is a labor. No, not everyone wants to do it every day. It's snowing. I don't want to go outside. It's raining, come on, just take them out of the freezer. Let's go.
Absolutely. Let's go through the process. So if someone puts an order in, can you kind of step it through from when the order hits the website, the process to when someone eats it?
So it depends on where you ultimately live in the country. And it also depends on the day that you place the order. So the distribution center at the end of the day, it's a product that needs to be climate controlled. So we don't ship things Friday through Sunday. We only send packages out Monday through Thursday. And it also depends how far away you live from the distribution center. So if it naturally we ship everything FedEx ground shipping, but if the estimated shipping duration is greater than 3 days, then we automatically upgrade your order to 2-day air. So all orders come within 2 to 3 days, and they typically are filled the day after you place them. If it's Monday through Thursday, if it's the weekend, you wait till Monday for the order to fill. If you live in a 1-state radius of Wisconsin, you typically get the order in 1 day. If you live in Florida or California or Maine or, the coast as far from Wisconsin as possible, you're likely waiting 3 days.
Yeah, fair enough. And so that also answers my next question. Is like, so I've got some family members that are in food, and there's always talking about like food waste, cooking too much, whatever. It's like, it's tough to get that right. Well, from what you're describing, it's like the order is shipped the next day. And so orders come in, you know what you need, get it, cook it, ship it out the next day. And so it's kind of like an assembly line.
Yes and no. So production facility is different than the distribution facility. So so basically what we do, and this is also part of the de-risking. This is why we wanted to do the Kickstarter, and we wanted to have a little bit of like critical mass when you launch a food business, because ribs, again, they take a long time. So if you go to a real barbecue restaurant, there's a guy that wakes up at 5 a.m. and says, I'm cooking 100 racks of ribs today. And when they sell out, they sell out. So if you arrive at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, they might say, oh, we're out of ribs, but we still have the sausage and we still have the brisket, or, oh, we're out of these items, we still have these. So there is a little bit of like forecasting. And those restaurants, if you've been to them, they close when they sell out. So sometimes they close at noon and sometimes they close at 10 p.m. and have to throw out a bunch of food. So we had to get a little bit of critical mass in the beginning so that we knew we weren't making 1 rack of ribs. We were making a couple hundred. The minimum order for starters is 4 half slabs. And we had a couple hundred customers pre-order. So in the beginning, I was like, awesome. Like, we need to now go make 800 racks of ribs. This is like a sizable, order. This is going to take a lot of time. No longer use just the smoker in my backyard. We actually have to, cook at scale and employ people that are going to be doing things like that. So we essentially created critical mass in demand. And what we do is we'll forecast how much we need for, a couple weeks. And then we'll make, thousands of ribs in Chicago and put them on a cold truck going up to Wisconsin and give it to our distribution partner. And so he then does the ultimate pick and pack. So it's a cold storage facility. It's a giant refrigerator. And he looks at the orders that come in and go, okay, put 2 half racks to Dave, put, 5 to Ken, 6 to Joe. And he goes through that. And so we're making in batches. And then the goal is to go through that batch as quickly as possible. But there's a forecasting game here, because ultimately, it is a perishable good. So you want to go through it as quickly as possible, but you also can't have the production facility making orders that are like less than 100. They need to be making as many ribs as possible. Hopefully that answers your questions.
Yeah. So how do you see the food and beverage industry changing over the next 20 years?
A lot of different ways. So one of the interesting things about food and beverage is there's a lifestyle / like fashion almost component to it. 100 years ago, we fed lobsters to prisoners. Now it's the most expensive item on the menu. There are diets and trends, people, right now, paleo and keto and, certain diets become popular in fat, or, vegetarian, vegan, whatever it is. And so there's an underlying element that you can ride the waves. So, given we sell meat, I try to dive into the paleo and keto communities, being like, load up on the meat, boys. We got a lot of meat. And, you avoid certain communities that don't appreciate that as much. You have to remember there's also, religious beliefs or lifestyles that, don't eat pork or don't eat beef or don't eat chicken. And so there's underlying, global population trends of like the groups that, don't eat pork are growing, or the groups that are like XYZ are growing. And so it's really interesting, because there's an element of lifestyle, religion, dietary restrictions. There's a couple different variables that are kind of like macro trends on what people want to eat. And then I think generally speaking, people have also just become a lot more health conscious over the past 15 years. And people are trying to avoid things that are highly processed, which I think plays well to us, because at the end of the day, what that really means is eat more meat, fruit, and vegetables. Avoid the Oreos, avoid the Cheez-Its, avoid the things in the middle of the grocery store. Try to stay on the outside of the grocery store. So we try to hype up those trends because we think we play into a lot of them. But from a long-term perspective, that's part of the reason it's also really important that we have more than one product, because you got to take what I call the no vote off the table. So if you're a family and your daughter's a vegetarian and, the son's doing the keto diet and the wife's doing this, I need to have an item that everyone can eat. It's hard if you say, hey, let's get Urban Smokehouse for dinner, and someone raises their hand, well, I don't eat anything on their menu. Next thing you know, we're already dead in the water. So it's important to have, as we think of building out our menu, we start with a pork product, then we added a beef product. Next, we're going to add a chicken product. After that, we're probably going to add some sides that are, vegetable oriented. And then we'll think about like flavor iteration. So we'll go back to the ribs and say, maybe there should be a spicy version. Maybe there should be a white Alabama sauce. Maybe there should be a Thai chili sauce, and do some cool fusion stuff. But I think in the beginning in food, it's important that you have something that everyone can eat. And you also recognize the underlying trends of what people want to eat in general, which is healthier and less processed.
I like that, how you're kind of focusing on getting those main products in the catalog and then slowly building it out based on that. And so I want to talk about your job prior to being a professional pitmaster. And so I personally find family office and that space fascinating. So can you share with the audience, what is family office, wealth management, and then kind of maybe some tips on top 2 or 3 strategies that you used while you were in that space?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate to land in the family office world. It's a pretty niche but emerging kind of category within financial services. But essentially what a family office is ultra successful, essentially hires a handful of people full time to manage their assets. Rather than being a customer of a traditional wealth management firm or a big bank, they're essentially doing everything in-house themselves. Part of the reason that is because they don't want to invest in products. They really want to do what they want to do. And so I worked for 3 different families. The first family I worked for was the Myers. Ed Meyer was the CEO of Gray Advertising for 36 years, which was the 4th largest ad agency in the world. He sold that for a couple $1 billion to WPP in 2004 and essentially hired 10 people saying, you guys focus on real estate, you guys focus on, the stocks, and you guys focus on buying private businesses. And so that was where I focused. I was predominantly focused on buying businesses that we wanted to own. And I ultimately did that for 2 other families as well. That gave me a really great lens for, one, what do all these businesses look like and which ones are working and which ones aren't? Because I would review, many different businesses every single day, and we'd only invest in maybe 1 or 2 a year. So it was, hey, what are the attributes or profiles of these businesses that are attractive, that we think have, a long runway for growth, have, consistent cash flow regardless of economic conditions, what industries are they in, things like that. So it also helped to also learn from these people that, arguably are some of the most successful people in America. They were all entrepreneurs themselves, or they all ran businesses themselves. And so it's interesting to see the values they cared about and how they manage people and I think it gave me a great framework for how I wanted to design and ultimately build and manage my business. And I say that's why almost the first, the planning stage, it wasn't easy, but I kind of knew what I was doing because I knew what I wanted to look for and what I wanted to ultimately build. When I got under the hood, that's how I think. Whenever you're building a business, it never goes it never goes how you think it's going to go. And I've said it before, I was shocked how much this was digital marketing. Because you think like, oh, like you're making ribs and you make a website and, customers find you. Yeah, you just got to focus on like making ribs and putting them in a cooler with ice. No. You have to learn digital marketing. If I give one lesson to anyone, you have to learn digital marketing if you want to do anything in e-commerce.
No, that's cool. I find that base fascinating. And so it's kind of, thanks for sharing the behind the curtain, what goes on there. So that's really cool. David, any follow-up questions before we get into the fire round?
Talked a lot about Urban Smokehouse, but is there anything else we want to cover here? I think it's a super cool company. If eating meat that has been procured over fire and smoke has been in style for 75,000 years. And so you're really tapping into something that I think is really cool. And when people think physical products, they often don't think of food and beverage. And so you're actually the first guest that we've had on podcasts, I believe, that's been in this space. And so for the listeners that are interested in becoming potential customers, is there anything else that they should know about the company?
We started with ribs. Ribs are our flagship product. They taste amazing. If you like ribs, definitely give them a try. We added brisket this past September. I'm really proud of the brisket as well. And our next product's going to be hand-pulled chicken. It's going to be launching around probably January 1st. We're probably going to do a campaign around New Year's. But the product's been made. I was going back and forth with final label designs and things of that nature. So it'll be coming off here soon. But if you guys like barbecue and want to save some time, give us a try. I guarantee you're going to like it.
Sounds great. All right, let's get into the fire round.
I've got some brisket in my shopping cart. I had to stop shopping to tape the podcast, but I'm going to go back and get that. And so the website, urbansmokehouse.co.
.co, not .com or .co. And that's also our handle on all social media if you want to follow along with the story on, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, you name it. Or the URL for the website is our name on all social media as well. We try to keep it simple.
Yeah, and if you're on the fence about it, I saw there were some Christmas deals on there, so go snap some up. So awesome. Andrew, you ready for the fire round?
Let's do it.
It is a series of rapid fire questions. What is your favorite favorite book?
48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Excellent. What are your hobbies?
I was a swimmer in college, so I like all water sports. I like swimming, diving. Put me by a swimming pool or a beach, I'm happy.
Awesome. What is one thing that you do not miss about working for the man?
Having someone over my shoulder 24/7.
Agreed. All right, last one. What do you think sets apart successful e-commerce entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think what defines success in really any space is discipline and consistency. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to be the most talented. You don't have to have connections or money. If you just stick with it and you stay consistent, you'll make progress in anything in life, whether it's this business, your health, or whatever you're trying to pursue. Just be consistent and it'll work. Staying power. Just stay in the game. You'll get better each day.
Excellent advice.
Absolutely. Andrew, if people are interested in getting in touch with you or learning more about urbansmokehouse.co, what would be the best way?
Message us on any of the social media platforms. I also check the support email, so support@urbansmokehouse.co if you want to email me. But I'm very accessible and my contact information's out there. So add me on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever you like, and I'll get back to you.
Awesome. And we'll post links to all that in the show notes. Andrew, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Firing the Man podcast, and we're looking forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, guys. This was really fun.
Yep, appreciate it.
Thanks for watching this video. If you got some value out of this, would you please hit the like and subscribe button? This is a free way to support the show, and it really helps us build our audience.